Hi guys. I'm back and I wanted to read something and just kind of whisper, and so I recently picked up this pamphlet at the grocery store, Foraging for Wild Edible Foods. And I follow a few people on social media that are foragers, and I have a few friends who are very knowledgeable and do some foraging themselves. Not always necessarily for food, sometimes for herbs that they make medicinal salves and elixirs out of, and I just love it. I think there are plenty of things plants that we consider weeds and nuisances that actually are very beneficial for us, and they're just growing all over. But if you don't know what's what, and there's a lot of times where a certain beneficial plant looks very much like something that is toxic or could hurt us. So you do need to know, you need to be plant aware, and I find it very fascinating, and I definitely want to learn more. And I do have that app on my phone as well. Picture this or something like that. I feel like it's still somewhat hit or miss, but overall it works pretty good as well. So first thing, it says a folding pocket guide to sustainable practices and harvesting techniques. So first thing, safety first. The most important consideration when foraging for wild plants is to collect healthy plants and to avoid being harmed by dangerous plants. Some, like poison ivy, poison oak, and giant hogweed, are toxic when contacted and can cause skin rashes and blistering. And so let me show you this picture of these three. Let's see if it'll focus. Just a little too close, I guess. So, poison ivy is a small shrub or trailing vine that has leaves with 3 leaflets. So the leaflets are a cluster of 3 leaves in a little group, and then it has like spacing on the vine before you see the next set of 3 leaflets. That's poison ivy, poison ivy. The next is poison oak, and it is a small shrub and has oak-like leaves, oak-like leaves with 3 leaflets. So it's very similar to the poison ivy in that you would have a group of 3 leaves and then space on the vine, and then another group of 3 leaves. The only difference is the leaves are shaped like oak leaves, oak like leaves, oak like leaves. And then the next is giant hogweed, and this is a huge plant. They can grow up to 23 feet or 7 meters tall. And it has a flat top cluster of white flowers. Flat topped cluster of white flowers. Giant hogweed. Giant hogweed. So, even the picture here for me is like, it's so dense and it's hard to like really tell. And I think this is one that I just saw on one of the Foraging social media accounts I follow that there's like a beneficial plant that looks much like the hogweed, and they can grow like right next to each other as well. So you just have to be very knowledgeable, so don't start foraging without being prepared. Never collect plants from polluted areas like roadsides, stagnant ponds, etc., or areas that have been sprayed with pesticides. Very good advice. Some plants can develop fungal toxins. Don't eat any fruit that shows sign of mildew or fungus. Side note, have any of y'all seen that artwork this woman creates? And I am really bad at remembering names, but I loved her artwork. And if people ask in the comments, I'll find it and get her information posted. But she creates fruit, so she uses a mold, like one of those foam molds, and makes shapes of fruit, and then they're completely encrusted in different stones and minerals. Stones, different types of natural stones, to create like a molded lime, a molded lemon, but they're jewel encrusted. I just love it. It's beautiful to me. Signs of potentially poisonous plants include if it has milky sap, bitter or soapy taste, if it has spines, thorns, or fine hairs, a parsley or carrot-like foliage, almond scented, grains with pink to blackish spurs, pink to blackish spurs, or if the seeds, beans inside pods. So it's interesting. The seeds of some plants, like choke cherry, contain cyanide and can kill you. Consider these general rules to determine if a berry is poisonous. White, green, and yellow berries are rarely edible. White, green, and yellow berries are rarely edible. 90% of blue, black, and purple berries are edible. 90%. 99% of triplet fruits, raspberries, blackberries, 50-50. Don't take those chances. Half of red berries are edible. Choke cherry seeds contain cyanide. So, I don't know if you can see that's over here. The choke cherry is red like a cherry. Test all plant parts for edibility before you consume them. Some have both edible and inedible parts. Do not assume that a part is edible when cooked is also edible when raw. So sometimes you can eat them raw, sometimes you have to have them cooked. Universal edibility test. Eating small amounts of toxic plants can cause problems ranging from mild stomach upset to death. Follow these few steps to determine a plant's edibility. Separate the plant into its parts: roots, stems, leaves, buds, and flowers. Test one plant part at a time. Smell it. Does it have a strong or unpleasant odor? That's a bad sign. Test for contact poisoning. You do that by placing the plant piece that you are testing on the inside of your elbow or wrist for a few minutes. If your skin burns or itches, don't eat it. To be comfy, but no, I'm just getting messed up. Then you would select a small portion of the plant and prepare it the way you intend to eat it. Before placing it in your mouth, touch a small portion to your lips to test for burning or itching. If you have no reaction, chew it and hold it in your mouth for 15 minutes. Wow. If no reaction occurs after 15 minutes, swallow and wait for several hours. If no ill effect, you can assume it is edible. Repeat with other plant parts. I don't know if I feel like that is definitely like a more advanced stage of foraging. I think beginner foragers would do better to verse themselves in the common edible plants of their area and try to source and find those first and know certain that they are those plants and start there. This is good information to know if for whatever reason you had to survive, but out in the wilderness. But definitely advanced to the stage where you're trying plants and seeing if they're poisonous or not, as a side hobby. Not, survival mode is one thing. So next it talks about berries and fruits. So there's some tools that you might have are a shallow collecting container, a heavy glove, a berry rake, berry hook, and a tarp. You can see this little basket, and you can see the berry rake. So it would collect it in a little container, and it's got kind of like a rake edge on one side. From my knowledge, most berry bushes are going to be a little thorny. And also, I don't think it's something. Berries can be ripe and juicy, and you can squish them very easily. And also, it's just a lot of collecting, so I would assume being able to just like scoop through the bushes would allow you to more quickly collect berries. An efficient way to harvest berries or fruit is to place a plastic sheet or tarp under a shrub or tree and shake it. Only ripe fruits will fall onto the sheet. If the fruits will not shake loose, simply wear a heavy glove to protect you from scratches when handling branches, and pick the berries with your free hand. Using a shallow container tied to your waist, a blicky, that's what that was, a blicky, 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 blicky. That using a blicky speeds up the process. Using a curved stick, a berry hook, that's what that's called, a berry hook, to grab higher branches of flexible shrubs and pull them towards you. A variety of berry rakes are available that speed up the picking process, but these tend to damage fruits. Be sure to make a lot of noise when collecting berries to avoid surprising bears who are also fond of berries. Yeah. I guess if you are in the wilderness and you are foraging, you need to be very aware of your surroundings. Most berry trees and bushes thrive in sunny areas, including meadows, river and pond margins, along country roads, etc., etc., etc. Soft berries should be eaten, cooked, or frozen as soon as possible. Fruit with thicker skins, such as plums and apples, can be stored for shorter periods before being consumed. Aggregate berries have tightly packed clusters of fruits called carpels or triplets. Many grow in dense thickets along trailing, often prickly vines known as brambles. I guess that's my experience with these type of berries. Bramble bush. The stout bristles and thorns easily puncture clothing and skin, so always harvest wearing gloves. Raspberries can grow up to 6 feet, 1.8 meters. Blackberries can grow up to 10 feet or 3 meters. Mulberries can grow up to 40 feet at 12 meters. That's more like a tree. Grapes. Found in thickets, field edges, and clearings, these fruiting vines use tendrils to climb high into treetops. There are over 50 native species. Beware of poisonous mimics. So, definitely I would take into account, like, you can't assume wild grapes are just safe. So, in Texas, we have a wild grape muscadine. And, you know, maybe, I'm not sure if muscadine is like a South United States grape varietal, or, you know, Southwest, or is it Texas varietal, or if it's just a varietal and you can find it lots of different areas. But I do know people make jelly and make wine out of that. Then you have cranberries. These plants all bear bluish berries with a crown on one end. They typically grow as shrubs or small trees in soil with low acidity, found in bogs, barrens, and dried up ponds. That would be like a blueberry that can grow up to 10 feet or 3 meters, a huckleberry that can grow up to 4 feet or 1.2 meters, or a serviceberry that can grow up to 15 feet or 4.5 meters. Next are cherries, plums, and apples. So tree fruits. So shrubs and trees often form large thickets. Seeds and autumn leaves of cherries are highly toxic and often blamed for killing livestock. I didn't know that. When I was a kid, my great-grandmother had a cherry tree in her backyard. She also had 2 or 3 small apricot trees, and I would pick the cherries off and eat them, and she always made jelly. I mean, it was a pretty good size little tree, so it produced a good amount of fruit, and she would make jelly. She also would always get wild plums from my uncle's family's farm and make jelly out of that too. I think apricot jelly is my favorite. I love cherries. I love cherry jelly. I love plum jelly. But there's just something about apricot jelly. Apricot jelly and butter on toast is like the best combination. So you have common choke cherry. So that can grow up to 20 feet or 6 meters, and that did say that the seeds of the choke cherry contain cyanide, so that would be one that you would definitely, I mean, most of the time with like a cherry or a plum, you're not going to eat the seed. So, but especially be aware that those things are possible and that you don't want to do that. Black cherries, the tree can grow up to 80 feet or 24 meters. Definitely, I mean, my grandmother's cherry tree was not a black cherry, but it was not that tall. I was a kid and maybe, 4 feet, and the cherry tree was maybe twice my height. It wasn't tall at all. Aromatic, they can have an aromatic bark and leaves smell cherry-like. The American plum, the tree can grow up to 30 feet or 9 meters. And the crabapple can grow up to 25 feet or 7.5 meters. I feel like we had a crabapple tree house or somebody in the family when I was a kid, but we never actually used it for anything. Like, I think crab apples something that's a little bit more of a challenge for people to figure out how to bring out the positive aspects, and a lot of people, I think it's like tart, and so people aren't sure and doesn't get used as much as it could. Strawberries, so they have strawberry separate from the rest of the other berries, because it says strawberry is not a true berry. It is the fruit, the pulpy center of the flower. Each of its seeds is actually a one-seeded fruit found in open areas and clearings. Interesting. And wild strawberries can grow up to 8 inches or 20 centimeters. That's interesting. So each little aspect of the strawberry is a one-seeded fruit. So nuts. I feel like probably nuts are going to be one of the easiest to identify and find. Nuts are a rich source of carbohydrates, proteins, and oils, and are among the most nutritious and calorie-rich sources of food found in the wild. So, to collect nuts, you might have a container or a tarp. You can collect off of the ground or knock nuts out of the tree with a stick. Keep the largest nuts and leave the rest for the squirrels. Discard if they are moldy or have holes in them caused by insects or worms. Crack nuts open with a nutcracker, hammer, or vise, or drive them over with a vehicle. That seems a little aggressive. Remove nut meats and boil if necessary to remove bitter tannins. So in Texas we have a ton of pecan trees, and that was a big thing my whole life, is collecting the pecans for snacks, but also my grandmothers would freeze them in preparation for Thanksgiving pies and Christmas desserts. So you can be on the lookout for black walnut, and you would harvest those in the autumn. So those are like in a thick green husk with the seed inside. The nut inside. Acorns, and there's lots of different types of acorns. There's over 20 species of oak that are native to North America. So acorns mature in September, so you can gather them. I think most nuts are probably autumn harvest. There's the beaked hazelnut. looks kind of like a gourd, actually, but kind of like a fuzzy gourd. So hazelnuts are also called filberts. Filberts. Leaves, shoots, and above ground parts. Leaves, shoots, and above ground parts. Parts. So for this, collecting these types of plants, you might need a sharp knife or scissors or shears. Clean cuts will heal more quickly. Never tear off leaves, and wear gloves when you're harvesting stinging plants. So it says, as a rule, choose younger plants, since these are generally more tender and tasty, and you want to use them as soon as possible after harvesting, since they'll dry out after a few days in the refrigerator. My mother-in-law, she has a garden. They live in the country, but she grows flowers mixed in with her vegetable garden that cross, I can't remember the term that it is when you plant like that versus, strictly vegetable, strictly flower. But it's better for the vegetables. They help ward off bugs and pests for your vegetables, and they help bring pollinators, which strengthen your vegetable output. But so she has some sunflowers in her garden, and she has big, huge yellow sunflower heads, and went out one morning and like 2 or 3 of them were just gone. And we were talking about it, and she was telling us how like she wasn't sure what it was because they just clean chopped off, it seemed like, and these sunflowers were 6 feet tall, and they seem like the sunflower head itself has got to weigh 2 to 3 pounds, 5 pounds, pretty heavy for most things. Like it's not a deer, it's too much for a bird. It seems like it's way too much for a squirrel. So we were looking at on YouTube actually what can go after sunflowers. Sure enough, squirrels, they will just gnaw their way clean, like right under the head, and just steal the whole thing, take the whole sunflower head back with them. Okay, so some of the plants that they have listed that are safe for foraging are dandelion. Dandelion. So there is a key. There's some little keys next to them, and one of them is a exclamation point. So it's an invasive species, a non-native. So invasive species are especially good to harvest as much as you can, so that species. Make sure that they're not overtaking the native species. So dandelions, and you can all parts of the dandelion plant are edible. Flower, leaves, stems, roots. Purslane, purslane, and that's more of a ground-hugging, mat-forming plant. I did buy purslane a couple weeks ago. It's in a hanging basket. I don't know if it's the exact same species of purslane or variety. I don't know the correct terminology, but I have a type of purslane. Asparagus. I have never once in my life seen wild asparagus. Not that I'm out in the wilderness foraging all the time, but I have been some places and I have never seen it wild. So ostrich fern. That looks like that fiddlehead fern. That's when it's coiled. And okay, so there are mimics, plants that mimic it and look very similar, that are potentially toxic, but they lack the U-shaped groove that's like in the stem. There's a U-shaped groove, so it's not a complete 3D cylinder. And also the mimics can have a woolly covering. So you can also be on the lookout for wild garlic and wild onion. And those both have like a nice flower on top. Like they would shoot up. I don't know why I put the mic around like the pamphlet was gonna talk. Also lamb's quarters or pigweed. So you would harvest the leaves or seeds. Common chickweed, and the lamb's quarters and the common chickweed are both non-native invasive species. Wild rose. Just one rose hip contains roughly 500 milligrams of vitamin C. Rose hips are one of the few wild fruits still available during the winter months. Plantain. And plantain is a common urban weed and is rich in vitamins A, C, and minerals. Stinging nettle. This is a tall, leafy plant covered in stinging hairs that cause a burning sensation. So, this is exactly what they said, like, to be aware for potentially toxic, but in this case, you can prepare them by boiling or steaming the nettle leaves before eating them. And it has a taste similar to spinach. One of the most popular wild edible apples is an excellent source of vitamin A, B6, C, D, E, F, K, as well as thiamine, riboflavin, and niacin, and is one of the first plants to appear in spring. Sheep sorrel, also called sourweed, and prickly pear cactus. So this in Texas, in South Texas especially, you wouldn't even have to forage for it. They sell this at the grocery store. So there were also, I believe, the Spanish term name for them is tuna, and it is the you can harvest the whole cactus, the pads, the flowers, and the fruits. But the tuna is it's like I'm assuming they're referring to pads as the actual flat cactus part, but this part, like the red pink part, is like the tuna, it's the fruit, and that's something that, the nopal you can also we can readily buy at the grocery store, and the tuna we can readily buy in the fruit section at the grocery store. So another thing that you can be on the lookout to forage are roots, tubers, and underground parts. Roots, tubers, and underground parts. So roots are the underground plant part that provides support and conveys nutrients and water to the plant via branching stalks and fibers. Rhizomes or rootstocks, usually a horizontal underground plant system that sends out roots and shoots from its nodes. Tubers, like potatoes, bulbs, like onion, and corms, like a crocus. Underground storage structures used to store nutrients to allow the plant to survive during adverse conditions. Bulbs have rings, corms do not. Okay, so those are very similar. So you would need a shovel, a trowel, a digging stick to collect those. Unless, if anybody's seen, this is not foraging, but the a modern way to plant tubers, potatoes, so that they're not technically below ground, so that you can easily collect them. So there's also burdock, and Jerusalem artichoke, and I think sunjoke is mistaken for Jerusalem artichoke, but I really like a sunjoke. So another thing, and this can be big money for people who forage wild mushrooms. Wild mushrooms are starting to be specialty ones for culinary restaurants and chefs. places are starting to specialize and grow these mushrooms, but you can also forage for them if you live in a place where they grow and have access to nearby woodland area, and you can get them for yourself, or some people will go and forage them and sell them to chefs and restaurants. You can make some good money doing that. So there's chanterelle. I love chanterelle mushrooms. You saute them in a whole bunch of butter. Delicious. Amazing. Morel mushrooms. So, morel mushrooms, like truffles, are some of the most prized mushrooms, and they grow in certain areas. I'm pretty sure morels are like best found in like the Appalachian region of the United States, and I don't know that I've ever had like an actual morel. Maybe I've had like where maybe the morels have been dried and put into a condiment that I've bought, but I know we've gotten truffles in that way, but I don't know that I've ever bought it dried or had fresh morels. Oyster mushroom, and again, I don't know if I've ever had oyster. And turkey tail, and these, well, the chanterelle mushrooms grow in like a little cluster around each other, where the oyster mushroom and the turkey tail kind of do like a classic stacking on top of each other mushroom grouping, where the morels are like your singular mushrooms with a cap. They grow singularly, but all of the mushrooms need to be cooked, whether boiled or sauteed or grilled, before using. They're only edible after cooking. So, all in all, with foraging, you need to do your homework. You need to know where to collect, know when to collect, what time of year is best for what you're trying to collect, and you want to avoid over-harvesting native plants. And also, too, if you can get familiar and make sure that you're taking an appropriate amount, you don't want to just take everything that's there, and you also want to be able to seed whatever plant you're taking back into the dirt. So taking some of the seeds and making sure that you're helping the plant grow and continue. You can harvest non-native plants at will. So it does not, over-harvesting non-native plants does not cause serious ecological damage, since those were introduced to that native ecosystem. And then know how to prepare your edibles properly. You want to make sure you wash in one or more changes of water to remove dirt and remnants of any herbicides and pesticides. And some nuts have to be boiled several times to leach out tannins. So, I really would love to get started doing some foraging, and we go out of the city into the country enough that situation where you made yourself sick. So this was this little quick guide that's like perfect for keeping in your car. So thanks guys so much. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. And I hope you like this new tiny mic. And I'll be back with another video, maybe later today, but definitely tomorrow. And don't forget to leave me a comment, like the video, and